This is Conversations with Men That Women Would Want to Hear. I'm Angeline Chu Longshore with my host.
Zealous Daniel out here in Portland.
Yay. Hi, Zealous. I'm here in Maui. So today we're talking about relationships in the pandemic. And today we'll talk about how our relationships are being affected by the pandemic, having a self-centered mindset in the pandemic, and antagonistic relationships. And then also the misinformation that's out there and how we really need to use some critical thinking. So, Zealous, I know you have a lot to say about how this pandemic is affecting you in your relationships. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm kind of coming in an interesting position here because I'm recently separated here about 6 months now, and had some feelings that the best way to get through this pandemic that would the best suit our children and everyone would be to try to put some of the past behind us and work through this. And um, I've been met with no means to try to make that work. It's like we've already started the separation, and I don't want you back in the house, and so it's had a fair bit of difficulties and challenges at a time where it's like I'm really looking at things of like what's really important, and not having our daughter in school and having the weather and having I opted to let her keep the house that we had been renting. I was paying rent there and got a small cheap apartment where I've had the kids stay with me for 3 days of the week, and it seems unnecessary. So hopefully most people are not in this situation, and you guys are feeling a little bit more of this opportunity to be present with your co-parents or partners, no matter what state your relationship is at. And hopefully there's a softening of heart and position. It's interesting, I feel like I'm in a position that a lot of people are going through, but I don't feel like I'm the majority in any way. So I kind of want to be able to talk about things in a way that everybody can kind of relate to them without the same level of intensity.
Well, there are people who are going through what you're going through as far as being separated, experiencing two different households, and there's different ways of doing things in the pandemic. I mean, that's why things are so heightened. I mean, everything, emotions are heightened, whether or not your family is, a cohesive family or going through separation or separated. And so we're going to have, I think, more extremes in our emotions. And so I'm looking at how it's going on for your family, because that's a real situation for a lot of people, just being in different households and how we perceive things, how we act toward each other, how our children perceive how we're acting toward each other, all of that. So in a just recent separation, it's even more heightened. So it makes it a little bit harder. And our judgments, our judgment of what's right also. I think we talked about that last week, of what's correct, how we go about things during the pandemic. Is that happening at the other household or when we take them out? So these are feeling like life or death situations, because they kind of are. I know kids don't get it usually if they're exposed, but they're life or death situations. So, this is real stuff we're going through, and it's definitely affecting relationships. So for you, that's probably more heightened. For us, it's heightened in a, I have to say, I don't know why I feel bad and guilty about saying it's beautiful. It's like, for us, it's beautiful. And I was just reading the article about how for some relationships, people are putting aside their differences because they're feeling that life or death situation, and like, what are we fighting for, or why are we holding a grudge, or if it came to the end, if one of us or all of us are going to die, what do we really want to do? What do we really want to do with this time? And that's really life. Like we have this life, we have this life to live. what do we really want to do with it? So,
And if it really is apocalyptic bad, how do you want your last days to be spent? Trying to be right with your partner, or to point out their flaws? Or do you want to, try to look for the things that you loved about the person and the things that they're good at and they shine at? I think that, something that I struggle with is, um, my partner's very aggressive, and there's this aggressive energy that, we kind of have talked about it, how it's a very like masculine energy, and with this cultural shift that we have with the rising empowerment of women, that women, whether it's a cultural phenomenon or just something that I'm experiencing, or, if it's an effect of me softening my energy and not being a real aggressive male, there's a number of different things, but I just feel like at this time, aggressive women are only hurting other people, and it's this like self-centered mindset that's, lacks the awareness of how they're affecting other people, whether it's, and it's absolutely true for the men out there in the world too that are these aggressive males. We have hard facts that are saying, with the pandemic, there's an increase in, domestic violence, and it's like there's a lot of things that are compiling to this that we got to be aware of, but a lot of it has to do with this aggressive energy, and I mean, you have to look at every case in a very, in a specific case by case specifics as far as domestic violence and things go, but, um, I think when you go and you put two aggressive people in a relationship, if the woman's trying to fight her ground and she has an aggressive person, and then you maybe put alcohol into the mix too, it's going to make for some nasty domestic violence. So
and then we're
I
all
think
staying
that
at
that's,
home. So like,
yeah, yeah.
it's
Well,
more intense.
my real point is that, right now with the pandemic, and in particular, it's not the time to be aggressive. It's not the time to fight for what you want. It's the time to really embrace that more nurturing side, and to, what can you do to help the situation? What can you do to make your partner, your children, your neighbor feel a little better every day? So, and I think that we're my from what I'm seeing, I think there's more of that than an aggressive nature. But then in my own personal relationship, I'm dealing with just as much, if not more, aggressive nature. So
Well, I
that's
think
my
with
message.
the I think with the pandemic that we are given this opportunity. So like you were saying, okay, during the pandemic we really shouldn't be doing that. But then when I was thinking about relationships and how we're actually coming to this place of looking at life or death and being more vulnerable and saying, how do we really want to live our lives? We can look at that as like, not just during the pandemic should we be looking into our relationships in this particular way, but just to make that the new normal of, well, this, we only have so much time in general, whether we're in a pandemic or not. So why should we set up this model of being at odds with each other, where it's you against me? It's tug of war. So that's the antagonistic relationship that is a given if you're going to say that self-centered. No, I'm going to look out for myself, and you look out for yourself, and and so that it becomes this tug of war, pulling from each side. Mm-hmm. So if we can take the opportunity and go, okay, now that we have life or death, this pandemic facing us, and we're looking to do things differently, possibly it's softening the way that we have been really aggressive, or if it hasn't, to say, is it really worth it, whether or not we're in a pandemic, to really fight for what we want? Because our children are seeing us fight all the time, whether it's actually fighting or if it's just, okay, I'm going to get mine, and then you're like, no, I'm going to get mine, and you get yours, and it just makes people selfish. It conditions our children to grow up self-centered and self-serving.
And that's totally the way that it is too. Is it's like, when somebody offers you something and somebody's generous to you, then you want to return that with some form of generosity to show your thankfulness and you're grateful. And then right there with it, it's like when somebody's like, nope, this is mine. I got the last one. Whatever the deal is, it's going to create that exact same thing. And that's where we have, the toilet paper shortage. It's like people aren't really worried about wiping their butts. It's just like, oh yeah, I better be sure and get that. Like you see everybody else getting it. So it's, very important that we we're generous and kind and loving to our partners, and we're not trying to be self-centered.
Well,
And
yeah. Oh, sorry if you had something to say.
you continue.
Okay, you said something about women being really aggressive these days, or just more male-like, and I think that is part of this problem that men can't solve until women realize that they are doing this. They are being that way. They are being self-serving. They're taking what we call being independent and strong and really stepping out on that and saying, no, I get mine first. And that doesn't set up a good foundation for supporting a loving, nurturing family. I mean, when you think about it, I get mine first. How is that loving and nurturing? Whether you say it or you physically act in that way, or you're thinking that way, your motivation comes from that, and your children see that, your husband feels that. And so women need to realize that that's not being helpful to the family. And men are trying to make up for it. They're like, oh, I can be the nurturing and I can do this and that to try to soften everything. But why does the woman get to just do what she wants to do? Just because years and years and years of unfair treatment to women that happened in the past. When are we going to say, okay, that's enough. Now you men have shown us that you care about us. So I just think that this is an opportunity for women to stop that, but they have to realize it. So, I mean, I don't really like to mention this, but I'm writing a book, and I think they need to read that, because that, to me, is the only way to really see why. Why are we doing this? It's not conscious. It's actually, men, if you're watching this, it's not that they're trying to hurt you, and you probably know they're not trying to hurt you. All women are this way because they've been told to be this way. So I think men need to realize that it's almost not personal. It's a cultural thing that women have stepped into this role, and it does hurt men, and it's harmful. But we're all fighting, and we're not really looking at the real problem. And the real problem is this antagonistic relationship is caused by women stepping into this role, and it's a cultural phenomenon. It is, definitely.
Yeah. I think it's crazy the way that you started this as saying, it's a problem that men can't solve until, and I just, it sits with me because men are so typically
Problem
problem
solvers.
solvers. That's what we do. It's like, you complain about your bad day, and it's like when you really want to just be consoled and heard. And if you complain to a man, he's going to say, oh, well, have you tried this? Or maybe if you do it this way, or, why did you do it like that? Or, and I think that what it kind of comes back to it is the way that we're going to get this cultural change is that women need to come up with a solution. And if the solution is run your man off, then you're going to have your family unit is going to be broken down, and you're not going to have that. Whereas if you can try to look for the solution internally and say, hey, what is my behavior doing? You don't have control over your partner's behavior. You're affecting their behavior, but you don't have control over it. But you do have control of your behavior. I feel like so much of the conflict that comes up in my relationship starts with my partner being aggressive, trying to stand her ground when I'm not even trying to push for leeway or to do something that, was just to go into a house that I paid for that was our shared home. She wants me to respect her space. Well, it's like you're getting angry with me because you want me to respect your space, but ultimately it wouldn't be your space if I didn't provide it for you. And if you were able to just not get angry and say, hey, you know, it makes me uncomfortable when you just walk in here. Can we try to come up with a better way to go about things, or just to not have an aggressive energy? Because as soon as she throws her aggressive energy to try to stand her ground, then it throws up a defense from me.
Yeah,
So,
there's something that
you know,
I have to tell you, and I don't think I've ever told you this. I don't even think that most women don't know it, and most men don't know it. But that aggressive behavior, that defensiveness, comes from the woman being told that she needs to watch out for men. As young girls, we're
mhm.
told we need to watch out for men to harm us sexually or take advantage of us, and that is drummed into women's heads so much that women are not even aware how they react around men, even if there's no sexual anything involved. Just a quick story. I have a group of friends who they were talking about how they went to Bali, and they said, you know how it is when you walk up to a group of men, and like the men there, the people there are so different. They're so sweet, and they didn't feel so like fearful. I was like, why do you feel? I mean, I didn't say this out loud because, it's like I'm strange if I say this, but I'm thinking in my mind, why are you fearful around men? If you just walk up to a group of men, they are good people. I mean, generally, they're like people, but it's the conditioning, and I think I did say something, and it was sort of like, well, you know how that is, and I'm like, because every woman, and men don't know this, every woman fears for the something deep inside of them that's going to be taken away, that's going to be like ruined, that their virginity or their something, they don't even know. It's not even like conscious anymore. They're just like defensive, and so they have to now hold their ground and stand strong, and they're told that they have to be like step into this male role and be this amazing super mom and superwoman and wake up and be amazing and badass, and then there's that fear underneath that. So
Mhm.
the defensiveness and the anger is like so subconscious. Like they don't even know what's driving them. And culture congratulates them for being strong, but it's really a deep rooted fear. And they can't let themselves be vulnerable because they've been told that they're going to get hurt. They're just going to get hurt. So that's where that
You
comes
know,
from.
and it makes me kind of think about in general this story that you share is I can relate as a man. When I see a group of men together, I have to put on a little bit more of an edge. And I was just like thinking of this story out as like, if you just put a baby in one of those six guys' arms, you wouldn't have that feeling. You know, it's like when you see a kid playing near a group of men, you're at ease. But when you just see a group of guys together that are, without any female energy around there, you kind of have to be on your guard. So it's not just the females. I see where that's happening. And I think there really is a root to that, and I think there's also a common sense to it. It's like, there you you do need to be a little bit more cautious, I think that that is something that is probably an instinct that has gone on for a long amount of time for good reason. But to see it carry over into the home, into the family life, that's where it's really kind of becoming a problem, as having that energy, directed to your partner, and yeah, the only one who can solve that problem is going to be the women,
The
because you can't
woman.
address men. I can't address that with my partner without triggering the exact thing that I don't want to have happen. And it's yeah.
I'll tell you something that is even more shocking. And this is another story about this similar experience that I had with this theme. So I went to this seminar called Understanding Men. And there's a point in the seminar where the speaker, she said that she wanted all the women to raise their hands if they felt that they have that fear, that threat and fear. And at first, people didn't really want to raise their hands, but then she said, if you are really wanting to get what you came here out of this seminar, to really understand your partner. These were all people who either were married or in relationships or wanted to better their relationships. Then I want you to admit, you have to admit that you have this great fear and you have to let go of it. And I want everyone to raise their hand who has that feeling. And then women raised their hand and they were sobbing. They were crying because it was so hard to admit that they had this thing that was so deep inside of them. So when it comes to that in your marriage, it's so built in that in women, in American women, in this culture today, and that they're not even fully aware of it. So their defenses come up with any little thing, just because you're a man, And then, because you are a man that has so much control over their life, then they can be even more defensive. And so that's where the wall comes up, and that anger, and that like, no, you can't get away with that, kind of thing. So it's very deep rooted, and I want to paint this picture like of how this is actually so deep rooted, because I think a lot of men don't realize this, and they don't realize that their women don't realize this. So that's why it starts with women understanding this whole cultural phenomenon that's going on that they're not even aware of. And men can't solve the problem. As feminine as you can be, as nurturing and trying to step in for the woman, you can't be a woman. You can't do the things in the way that a woman was built to do things. So
yeah.
And that sounds hopeless, but it's not.
Well, it comes back to it's like ultimately, if a woman's frustrated in the relationship, if the relationship is feeling the frustration, it's going to be felt on both sides. But trying to be aggressive and stand your ground and to be strong and independent, which the strong independent thing, like, that's a whole, we should just try to unbox what independence really is, because I think that, we're dealing with so much of this, like, say one thing but not really get at the root cause of it. It's like there's so much. We're at this day and age with technology, with social media and supercomputers in our pocket, that we're getting bombarded by like so much information that you can't really know what's really true. It's like it's part of like what's pushed this strong independent women movement. It's like something that has been gained momentum through the feminist movement, but yet I don't think it suits everyone. I think that there's a place for these strong independent women, and there's a place for feminism, but it isn't necessarily for everyone. I think a strong independent woman doesn't need to have a partner, but to have a family with. They don't need to have a male partner to have a family with, and that's okay. I think that there's plenty of room for that, but we have this movement that is carried over into like what I see as this more lesbian feminine community that has their place and is just as perfect and divine as any, but they're carrying it over into this heterosexual relationship that that women in these relationships need to be the strong independent women, but yet ultimately they don't. Strong independent women need to be strong independent women, and not in relationships and marriages. And it's this misinformation that's just getting pushed out through social media and through our culture that isn't really suited to everyone, and it's like, you see it in this whole COVID pandemic, where you have so much information going on, and nobody's really doing, very few people very few people are able to do real scientific studies to find out, is 5G affecting people, and COVID virus, it's like, and a lot of stuff can't be factually dated. We can't test everyone to find out who has antibodies. Until we can test and know who has had the COVID virus in their body and not, we will not know the real numbers. Everything is going to be projected off of a scheme where people are, going into a hospital because they're on their deathbed, or they have enough money that they're rich and famous that they can just pay to get tested themselves, And so you really just got to use critical thinking and try to just deduct what's really going on here,
I think that there are so many unknowns in the COVID situation, and even in the way that we've come through history as women. Like, we didn't know feminism would unfold like this. We didn't know the coronavirus would mutate and do all these things, and we don't know which tests and which treatments are going to work. So we can only go from where we are here. Like, couldn't have known back then what we know now. So really for both, it's like critical thinking, looking at what we have, taking a step back, not relying on all the old information. I mean, we really have to look at each piece as it unfolds and say, let's look at this practically, and how can we move forward with the best knowledge at the time, and that's critical thinking, and
And it's really also just kind of like looking at things in this whole essence of, you know, to explain away that critical thinking is important, and which choice you make is to go and say, okay, we have some people saying, masks aren't effective, you don't need to wear masks. Some people saying masks, are effective, or they're going to help spread it to other people or whatever. We're trying to get over this, like, it feels weird for everybody to be wearing masks, versus some people are like, what the fuck, people, why are you not wearing masks in the grocery store? And so what you have to do is look at both sides and say, oh, okay, like what I see and how I boil it down to it is I know that this mask, that a cloth mask is not going to really filter the air because it all leaks in through around the side. It's not all coming straight through. I have a HEPA filter mask with a valve in it that I use for, sandblasting and glassware. And it's like that thing gets sweaty and hot, and if it's not on just right, the air will fog up my glasses. So it's like it just takes a small little gap. But yet, I realize that having that mask on is keeping you from touching your face. And if you cough, it's giving you some level of protection. But you have to just kind of like look at it and go, okay, like what side do I need to err on? Well, the mask isn't going to keep me safe, like from getting the coronavirus, but it's going to reduce the likelihood of me getting it in. It's going to reduce it. And if I had to make a choice between wear a mask or not wear a mask, I might as well go for the error on the side of safety and just wear the mask. And if anything else, I want to give other people that are wearing masks reassurance that they're okay and that we are helping save other people from getting exposure, because you don't know who that has a mask could be a carrier. So it's like you need to give the people that are wearing masks encouragement and support. And so it's like that's where I'm at. I'm like, I don't think that I'm saving myself from getting it. I'm probably reducing the chance, the likelihood by, less than half. My own mind, wearing a mask is probably reducing my chance by maybe 20% at most. But I want other people that are wearing masks to feel comfortable for it. I want the guy at the grocery store that has to see, 60 people an hour. I want them to feel like it's okay for them to wear a mask. So that's, and just to like look at both sides of it and use critical thinking to figure out where you think the real fact is statistically, and then to like, let's err on the side of safety. What if I don't wear a mask? I might have a little bit more increase of the chance. I might encourage somebody else to not wear a mask. I might cough on somebody and not know it and give them the virus.
This is very interesting.
Why you gotta just.
To me, it's very similar to what can change in relationships too, because we're talking about the greater good. We're talking about there's this realization that we have been so, like, as an American, our freedoms, how we feel about our freedoms used to matter the most. And now we're looking at the social responsibility of our actions affecting the whole, which it is. It affects the entire world now. So there's this shift of consciousness that we're being forced to realize. And when you look at that model of my action affecting a lot of people, so maybe I shouldn't be so self-serving. Maybe I shouldn't just kind of go, I feel like doing this, so I'm going to, because it's going to affect the whole world. Well, it's the same in your family. If you think, I am going to do this because I deserve it. I deserve my time. I feel like going for a walk. I feel like being with my friends, going to a spa day, and you've got to pick up the slack. It's like, well, if we have the same model as every single thing we do in our family affects the entire family. Our actions, our reactions, our thoughts, the motivation behind our actions, that all affects our family. And so if we look at this model of as Americans, we've had our freedoms, we've been super independent and very self-serving in thought. Maybe there's a softening of that, which can really now filter in our personal relationships. That there's a hope there. I think there could be an opening. And one thing I wanted to say was that I have a friend who said, this is a woman, she said that after she read my book, because she's helping me edit it, she realized that she needed permission to not be that badass, like that woman who just like steps into that male role and gets it done and goes out to work, and her family comes second because she's got to get out there and do whatever that it is that she's been told she. And so in this way, this is the time, she said, this is the perfect time during this pandemic when we should be home. She's like, my family needs me now. They need me. And I thought, no, I need to go work. Because there's that other thought that we've been conditioned to believe. We need to be out there doing what women are supposed to do in this day and age. But when the information that she got gave her permission, she was like, I could really do things differently. And it could really work. And so she quit her job. Not that I'm saying anybody should quit their job, but she is in a position where she could, and she and her husband could reevaluate what they're doing and how they're doing it. And I haven't talked to her husband yet, but I'm sure he's very happy. Not that they don't have the income, but it's a different motivation of why she's home, and what she's going to do at home and how she's going to support him to be out in the world doing what he needs so that the income comes in. And it doesn't mean she can't work or won't work, but if she does choose a job, it's going to be for a different reason with a different motivation.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where I see the pandemic softening women's stances, possibly, if they understand this different way of approaching relationships. And and we all can look at this, and I think men are already there, but this way of not being so self-serving in our American culture, where we're like, what, we all, our actions all affect each other. So I mean, we can go on and on about that, like
I wanted to touch on this one, that using critical thinking in the way that you raise your children. And I think that's something that we have going on with, I've got 2 daughters, and we've talked about how there's this encouragement for the women for young girls to be strong, independent girls, and to be to encourage that strength and independence in young kids. And I think that what's happening there is we're encouraging that because we don't want to see, I don't want to see my daughter end up in an abusive relationship with a male that doesn't treat her with respect, so I'm going to encourage her to be this strong, independent girl. Where really what we need to be encouraging and showing them through example is this critical thinking, because we don't want to create these girls that are going to be closed down because they're too strong and they're trying to control these things. It's and if that's not what their nature is, if that's what their nature is, then by all means you have to use critical thinking to encourage that. But it's if you have a feminine little girl, you don't want to be encouraging her to be this strong, tough girl if she feels like she really wants to be a homemaker and she wants to have, a relationship with a strong man that she can help support. We look at things as well, if my daughter is not a strong, independent woman when she grows up, then what's the alternative? We just flip to the she's going to be a weak, powerless, woman, which is what we don't want. So it's but there's the middle ground. So what we need to be encouraging and using and teaching is this critical thinking and seeing where do things meet in the middle, and that's going to be different for everyone, and that's what we need to encourage.
Well, I see. I have to say, I see it a little bit differently. As a woman who, I've thought of myself as weak at times, and then I've thought of myself as super badass strong, and it's not really in the middle of those. It's, to me, it's being completely honest and dropping into the vulnerability, actually letting go of that fear and defensiveness helps you to drop into the honest place of your own vulnerability, and then to feel strong within yourself that you can handle it. So that's a whole different thing, to be able to be feminine and also be strong and vulnerable at the same time, where you're being really honest. It's not like, okay, I'm not going to be weak and I'm not going to be strong. Because some people are going to, like, if they hear that and like, that's the new way, they're going to try to straddle the line. But instead, to just like drop the defenses and know that examine and say, okay, I have this fear of letting people maybe take advantage of me, get the better of me, get my jobs, get other men. Like if you're in the workplace and you're a woman, you're competing against the man and competing against the woman. The man and the woman you're competing against for jobs, but then for the woman, you're also subconsciously, it's a fact that there's a male in the room and you're competing against them for, not for the man, but there's that sexual element there that's in us. And so that's why women don't have each other's backs, because they can't lean into women anymore, because there's just this automatic fear that they're going to take whatever it is that they have. They're going to get the better of them, and men are going to hurt them. There's like just these deep-seated, like not rational fears. So,
and it comes from society, like, you know what I mean? Like when you realize like this is, what society is forcing upon us. So I think that like really we have this internal struggle of like, what is your personal desires? What are you personally comfortable with? It's like the quest for more is something that like society pushes you for, and that's thrill of the game. But it's like ultimately you have to just really find a peace at yourself. And I think that's where like meditation is so effective for people, is because it's like you're not having this social pressure, or whether it's media or society, and it's just really time for you to be like, what is important to me? Where do my thoughts go? Instead of all of the pushing from our social forces. So yeah. What you want, it's like that's what's selling you. That's the whole art of sales and advertising is. It's like, ooh, we have this shiny thing and you want it and it's just good for you. And if you've got the money, if you're really worth it, we've got a more expensive one, where it's like ultimately, you can find peace in what it is that you really like.
Yeah. So culture has put women in a corner, and they don't know it. That's the thing, is like there's this place that we've come to and we're not even sure how we got here. And if women, if they realize where they are, and like I said, not try to like find the new way, but really like, and not be barefoot in the kitchen or just a homemaker. Like I know there's some people who want to be homemakers. I love being a homemaker, but I'm not saying that every woman should desire to be a homemaker. I'm saying when you drop that defense, drop the maleness, drop the guard, drop the fear, and come into that real vulnerable place, you become a stronger woman who can be a force in the world to reckon with in a whole different way than in that male posturing. So yeah. It's not that you can't be out in the world. You can run your business. You can be, doing all those things that you're doing. It just comes from a different place of motivation and a different ethos of like how you even approach being out there. So it's even stronger. And I know it and I see it, but it's hard for women to know or see it because they don't know the history, which, I have to explain eventually, maybe on this podcast, or you can just read the book. And I'm still writing it, so it's not out there yet. But if men knew this, they would feel relieved. If women knew this, they could shift, and that would help relieve the men to just be. Men just want to be. They just want to do what's good for the family. They want to make women happy. They want to make their woman feel good and beautiful and happy and support her and be that champion for her brilliance and her geniuses, which we all have. And that's going to happen. So we can all move forward in this way with a stronger woman being stronger in a different way. So all of this can shift. And I have to say to the men, you're doing really well with the situation we have now, but you can't but you can't be better at it. And you're fabulous, but you can't do any better than you're doing. You're trying so hard, and it's hard, and it's not going to get easier until the woman changes. So, like, there's hope. There is hope, but it has to be a shift starting with the woman changing. And all women, all
Yeah.
American women have this like change that needs to happen.
Being a problem-solving man, my solution to this changing power struggle is to become more feminized and to try to be more emotional and try to appeal to this emotional side. And
Is it
surprise,
working?
surprise, it blows up in my face. Yeah, it's like, no, it's
Right. It's not
so
working.
and that's, ultimately where things, I just don't know. That's the thing that's frustrating, and I guess as frustrating as it is, it actually gives me some peace to know that having gone into having this become a separation, that the only way forward is out, and to go and recognize that if she's not willing to go and see herself and see her effect and see what she has going on, that then she's not going to change. There's nothing I can do to change her. I don't want to try to change her, because trying to force change onto somebody is just problematic from the get-go. So if she's not going to change on her own, c'est la vie. And now I can just recognize there's probably somebody out there. I can hone things I think are going to be a good partner for my future, and I know that that's out there and it's possible. And so, I to anybody else who's going through separations out there, just know something good is out there is waiting for you. And you don't have to feminize. You don't have to give up your ground as a man either. That's the thing, is like, when you're in this power struggle, the solution is not to let the woman take the power, but it's to not give your power away, and to know that being strong and tuning into your divine masculine is going to attract the right person to come into your life if that's what you want.
Well, there's another book, a sequel to this for men, that it's how to be the modern man, modern dad today, modern guy in relationships today, because it is a certain different way that is different from what men have been doing lately. Because, as we said, it's not working. And I've talked to dozens of men for hundreds of hours about this subject. And so I know thoroughly what we're trying to do, what men are doing is not working. But there is a new way, and it is standing around as a man and also at the same time supporting women. And it's totally doable. So maybe you and I will write this book, maybe you'll contribute to it, with your insight. But I mean, I already have it in my mind of what I know needs to happen. But then, since you're a man, I do want to check in with you and some of the other men.
I'm excited. I feel like I've learned a lot about cultural and society talking with you, and just looking at my situation and your situation and seeing, it's such a relief to have somebody who sees things the way that you do, being a woman that has a good life, has a good family. Like, you're the kind of person I want to get advice from. Don't take advice from angry single people about relationships.
Right.
If somebody isn't in a happy relationship and can't admit the struggles and things that they had to go through to get there, then they're not the person you want to be talking to. So
Right.
I'm excited. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a great way to wrap it up now. I mean, we've talked about a lot of amazing things today with the pandemic and relationships, and I hope that we've given you some hope that there is a new way. It is up to the woman, but I think women and culture can shift. I'm hoping to help instigate that. And in the meantime, just knowing this, hopefully, men, we've given you some relief, knowing that it's not all on your shoulders, and that there is something that you can do, and just be a man, just be manly.
Yeah.
So that's maybe one takeaway. So anything else, Ellis?
I think that having these conversations with your partner, if you're starting a family or want to start a family, or whatever the state is, I think that part of these conversations is to talk about it, because I think that we have this cultural shift that's happening, that's pushing women in this direction. And I think that the way around it, I don't think my relationship started off in this direction. I think it was going in the right direction. I think we had good dynamics. I think things changed up the way that they have. And I think that the best way in hindsight to have kept this from happening is to have started having these conversations. So I think that talking about the roles in relationships and the feminine and the masculine, and who really has influence in what way, is going to be important. I think that women feel like they're powerless in a relationship oftentimes, and that's what drives them to become this more aggressive nature. And I think that they just need a little more reassurance that they actually have a lot of input and control, and they can do it in a gentle way that's actually suited to them and that will be received by the man. And to just trust that, like, if you express your feelings in a feminine way in the right time to your partner, that they're going to be more receptive to you than you may think, and that you might actually, to recognize in these family dynamics, that women really do have a lot of influence and control, and they can do it in a very nurturing feminine way that makes everybody feel a little better, and the men try to control things in a little more of a masculine way, and that doesn't necessarily make them feel good. And I think that it's that triggered response of, like, the masculine men trying to control things, and the woman's like, well, I don't like the way that feels, so I'm going to reflect that. And so that can kind of trigger this in relationships, but to, like, recognize, like, it's just a response. It's not really what you're feeling. It's not really getting you the results you want. So talking about having these conversations with your partner is going to really just shine the light on the underlying currents and tones and energies in your relationship. And when you start talking about it and then you're in your relationship, then you're going to grow as a couple, and you're going to be able to see things in a beautiful way. Whereas if the men just complain about the women when the women are around, and the women just complain about the men when the men aren't around, and the women are like, you need to take control, you need to do this, that's where shit's getting undermined, and where our relationships are going down the drain. And if you can just, try to have these conversations with your partner, take this time during the pandemic to open up and be vulnerable and talk about, your feelings and influences, and what's happening and what really feels right to you, will be the way to really make your relationship last forever.
You're talking about coming together, which I think is similar as the world is coming together in this pandemic. We have to come together for things to work. We can't be siloed and expect things to just be worldwide peaceful, and solve the whole pandemic problem. So in the same way, we can't be siloed as individuals and, like, make family work. We have to come together. So, yep, that's another good takeaway. Take this time, come together, have those conversations. All right.
Build communication.
Well, this is a great show. I think there's so much chock full here. Hopefully you got a lot out of it. This is Conversations with Men That Women Would Want to Hear, and it's sponsored by Chew on This Media and Visualize Unlimited LLC. And we will see you next week. I'm Angeline Chu Longshore in Maui, Hawaii, and
Zealous Daniel out here in Portland, Oregon.
all right, see you next week.
Thank you.